Don't be afraid in nature, one must be bold, at the risk of having been deceived and making mistakes. I think making mistakes is as inevitable as receiving disappointments. Girls think that being glamorous means making mistakes and being irresponsible, and that's just not true. The smarter you are, the better prepared you are to make decisions in your life, the more likely you are to lead a satisfying life and be glamorous and fun and anything you want to be. Success does not consist in never making mistakes but in never making the same one a second time. If you have the insight of non-self, if you have the insight of impermanence, you should make that insight into a concentration that you keep alive throughout the day. Then what you say, what you think, and what you do will then be in the light of that wisdom, and you will avoid making mistakes and creating suffering. In your life, where are you not making mistakes? Sometimes if there's no mess, there's no change happening. I'd like to just be a little bit more open to making mistakes and not worrying about it so much. I became popular very young. I viewed myself as just a young actor trying to figure out how to do well, and, making mistakes and learning and growing. I feel that people are basically trying to do their best in the world. Even when you see people making mistakes, you understand why they're making a mistake. Everybody has flaws, everybody has demons, everybody has ghosts, but I think you watch people and you see everybody trying to do their best. It isn't making mistakes that's critical, it's correcting them and getting on with the principal task. I just did in my early 20s what most did when they were teenagers, being free and exploring and making mistakes, but I did it in France. I did it privately. Once you accept that we're all imperfect, it's the most liberating thing in the world. Then you can go around making mistakes and saying the wrong thing and tripping over on the street and all that and not feel worried. I don't think that we are a species or a people that can exist without making mistakes somewhere along the line. Well, I think that part of being young is not exactly knowing why you do some of the things that you do. And it's by exploring your life or experimenting or making mistakes and learning from them hopefully that you start to forge an identity. There are two things that come very easily to me, rooting for New York sports teams and making mistakes. Do not take yourself too seriously. You have to learn not to be dismayed at making mistakes. No human being can avoid failures. Doing startups is all about making mistakes. I think it's important for scientists to be a bit less arrogant, a bit more humble. Recognizing we are capable of making mistakes and being fallacious, which is increasingly serious in a society where our work may have unpredictable consequences. Failure is good. It's fertilizer. Everything I've learned about coaching, I've learned from making mistakes. To swear off making mistakes is very easy. All you have to do is swear off having ideas. Making mistakes is a lot better than not doing anything. Life isn't about algebra and geometry. Learning by making mistakes and not duplicating them is what life is about. You go on these internet blogs and people say the meanest things. I'm a normal person. Just because I'm in the spotlight doesn't mean I'm God's gift to the world. I'm learning and making mistakes just like every other 17-year-old girl out there. People think computers will keep them from making mistakes. They're wrong. With computers you make mistakes faster. Football is a game you cannot play without making mistakes. There are people who like just ordinary comedy fun, and making mistakes, which I do easily, and then there are people who like the falling over. There's always space for me to grow, and I think that experimenting and making mistakes is gonna get me to this position where I'm trying to be is always changing. Even the knowledge of my own fallibility cannot keep me from making mistakes. Only when I fall do I get up again. If you have the guts to keep making mistakes, your wisdom and intelligence leap forward with huge momentum. I am not afraid of making mistakes, but my mistakes were those that I could afford. That's very important. Mistakes will happen, but you must ensure that you keep them within limits you can afford. People who try to tackle failure attract failure. The more you indulge in analysis, it gets tougher. So just keep making mistakes and learn. You can't be in the public eye without making mistakes and having some regrets and having people analyze everything you do. For me, style is about how you feel that day and what inspires you, as well as taking chances and making mistakes. Everything has to be comfortable. If things are too tight or too constricting, I feel out of my element. You can only go forward by making mistakes. I'm on national TV in front of millions and I hate making mistakes. If you're cooking and not making mistakes, you're not playing outside your safety zone. I don't expect it all to be good. I have fat dogs because I scrap that stuff out the back door. I'm always afraid of making mistakes. I think I was born with that. So fear helps me from making mistakes, but I make lot of mistakes. Part of being young is making mistakes. I'm very good at making mistakes, so I realize that I should embrace mistakes and learn from them. I have made many decisions that I probably shouldn't have made, but life is about making mistakes, learning and moving on. I like courage, I like fearlessness, I like not being afraid of making mistakes. Experience is making mistakes and learning from them. You have to have a cultural ethic that allows for making mistakes. It cannot be that just because you make mistakes, you're out. You have to make mistakes in order to innovate. I've been really terrible in a lot of things because I learned by making mistakes. That makes you a different kind of actor, because you have to figure out for yourself what you do. You grow up by making mistakes. I've made a ton of them, but as long as I keep on failing better, I don't mind. I just don't like making mistakes. Making mistakes is part of life. The only things I would feel ashamed of would be if I had said things I hadn't believed in order to get on. Some politicians do that. I think making mistakes and discovering them for yourself is of great value, but to have someone else to point out your mistakes is a shortcut of the process. When we praise children for their intelligence, we tell them that this is the name of the game: look smart, don't risk making mistakes. Visit our website for more quotes, quoting.com.